Millions of people are screaming at a TV right now. But you? You feel absolutely nothing. You're not broken, and you're not just too busy. Science says your brain is literally immune to the biggest cult in America. Welcome to the psychology of the non-sports fan. It is Sunday in America. Across the country, grown adults are wearing the jerseys of other grown adults, yelling tactical instructions at a screen as if the pixels can actually hear them. The collective blood pressure of an entire city rises and falls based entirely on the trajectory of a leather ball. It is an intoxicating, socially sanctioned mass hysteria. And then, there is you. You are sitting on the couch, or perhaps enjoying an eerily empty grocery store during the Super Bowl, genuinely wondering if you were born missing a fundamental human microchip. When Monday morning rolls around, you brace yourself for the inevitable workplace ritual, the Monday morning quarterback session. You stand by the office coffee machine, nodding politely, deploying your carefully rehearsed survival phrases like, "Crazy game last night, huh?" Or "Man, that defense really fell apart." You are essentially a cultural anthropologist, desperately trying to blend in with a tribe whose language you simply do not speak. For a long time, society has offered you only two explanations for this apathy. The first is that you are just too busy and productive for trivial games. The second is that you are an arrogant intellectual snob, trying to feel superior by ironically calling it Sportsball. But both of these explanations miss the mark entirely. Your indifference to sports isn't a quirky personality trait, and it certainly isn't a conscious choice. It is a profound neurological and evolutionary divergence. While 70% of the population experiences a legitimate chemical high from watching a ball cross a painted white line, your brain's reward circuitry is looking at the exact same stimulus and categorizing it as completely, utterly irrelevant to your survival. You haven't simply opted out of American culture. Your brain fundamentally refused to sign the psychological contract of modern tribalism. So, why does the human species suddenly divide into two completely different neurological camps the moment a referee blows a whistle? To understand why you feel absolutely nothing, we first have to look deep inside the minds of the people who feel everything. To truly understand why you feel utterly disconnected from the hysteria of a Sunday football game, we have to look inside the brain at the exact moment of a game-winning touchdown. For a die-hard fan, that moment triggers a neurological fireworks show. For you, it's a flat line, a dial tone. Let's break down the biology of your indifference. It starts with a mechanism in the brain called mirror neurons. Discovered in the 1990s, mirror neurons are the biological foundation of empathy. They fire both when we perform an action and when we observe someone else performing it. When a quarterback takes a brutal hit, a fan's mirror neurons fire so intensely that they actually flinch. Their brain simulates a ghost of that physical impact. But your brain? Your brain watches a 250-pound man get violently slammed into the turf and processes the event with the same emotional detachment as watching a piece of bread pop out of a toaster. Your mirror neurons are working perfectly fine, but they refuse to map onto a highly orchestrated game that your subconscious knows is entirely artificial. However, the real dividing line between you and the guy wearing face paint in freezing weather lies much deeper, right in the brain's dopamine pathways. Neuroscientists use a concept called reward prediction error. It is the algorithm our brains use to learn what is valuable for our survival. When a fan watches their team score, their brain registers a massive, unpredictable reward. It floods their nervous system with dopamine, sending a powerful evolutionary signal. Our tribe has succeeded. Our territory is expanded. Our survival is secured. When you watch that exact same play, your visual cortex sees a man running across a painted white line while holding a piece of inflated leather. Your brain's reward center rapidly calculates the actual survival value of this event and returns a 404 error. It generates absolutely zero dopamine. It correctly recognizes that whether the men in the red shirts beat the men in the blue shirts has absolutely no bearing on your reality, your finances, or your life. You don't hate the game. You literally lack the chemical cocktail required to care about it. This chemical disconnect also explains why you find sports culture so physically exhausting. Have you ever walked into a crowded sports bar during the playoffs, heard the screaming, and felt an immediate, overwhelming urge to leave? You aren't being antisocial. You are experiencing a biological mismatch in dopamine baselines. Research suggests that people who naturally avoid loud, tribal gatherings, often introverts, creatives, or highly analytical thinkers, operate with a higher baseline of cortical arousal. Your brain is already active. You do not need the external stimulus of 80,000 screaming people to feel alive. In fact, that environment pushes your nervous system instantly past the point of enjoyment and straight into sensory overload. While the fans are getting hyped, your brain is essentially being assaulted by meaningless noise. So, the next time someone looks at you like you are a psychopath because you didn't cheer for a touchdown, take comfort in the science. You are not a buzzkill. Your neurological reward system simply has a much stricter, highly logical filter for what it considers important. But if your brain is so logical, why did human beings evolve to care so deeply about sports in the first place? And more importantly, what role were you meant to play in the tribe? To understand why you don't care, we have to understand why the rest of the country has to care. And to do that, we need to leave the modern living room and travel back roughly 50,000 years. Let's take a step back and look at what a football game actually is from a purely objective standpoint. It is a highly structured, sugar-coated simulation of proxy warfare. You have two opposing factions wearing brightly colored uniforms, essentially tribal war paint. They wear physical armor. They engage in visceral, physical violence to conquer territory, moving line by line, yard by yard, across a contested battlefield. For the majority of human history, our ancestors survived in a brutally unforgiving environment through one primary mechanism: the tribe. If you were cast out of the tribe, you died. Survival meant extreme loyalty to your in-group and extreme hostility toward the out-group. The human brain evolved to reward tribalism because, for millennia, tribalism kept us alive. Today, we no longer need to hunt mammoths or fight neighboring villages for access to a river. But the human brain hasn't updated its hardware. It still craves that primitive, life-or-death tribal connection. It still needs a shared identity. And psychologically speaking, the fastest and most effective way to build a shared identity is to have a shared enemy. Sports provide a safe, sanitized, socially acceptable outlet for our ancient bloodlust. When a fan screams at a referee, their brain isn't just reacting to a game, it is simulating the defense of its territory. So, this brings us to the ultimate question. If tribalism is a fundamental, hardwired survival mechanism for the human species, and you don't feel it when the Super Bowl is on, are you an evolutionary failure? Are you a genetic anomaly? Actually, it is the exact opposite. Prepare for the twist. You are not a glitch in the system. You are an evolutionary safeguard. Think about it from the perspective of an ancient tribe. If 100% of the population is completely consumed by the frenzy of a conflict, if every single brain is hijacked by the adrenaline, the war drums, and the emotional high of the battle, the entire tribe becomes incredibly vulnerable. If everyone is blinded by collective hysteria, who is watching the perimeter? Who is noticing that the weather is changing and a winter storm is approaching? Who is staying behind to ensure the infrastructure of the community doesn't collapse? Who is maintaining a cool, objective, and analytical mind when everyone else is acting on pure, unrestrained emotion? A successful, surviving society could never afford to have every single member be blindly tribal. Evolution required a biological division of psychological labor. It needed a specific percentage of the population to be naturally immune to the mob mentality. It needed the objective observers. That is who you are. Your brain's refusal to get swept up in the emotion of a football game is the modern echo of that ancient survival trait. While the rest of the tribe is collectively losing its mind over a fumble, your brain remains unbothered, conserving its energy and maintaining its baseline logic. You are the psychological anchor that keeps the human species from completely losing itself to its own passions. But before you let this evolutionary badge of honor inflate your ego too much, we need to have a very uncomfortable conversation. Because while you might be immune to the tribalism of the sports bar, this objective observer status comes with a dark side. And it is something that non-sports fans are incredibly guilty of. If you are a non-sports fan, you have probably experienced this exact scenario. You are at a social gathering. The conversation inevitably shifts to the big game, and you physically cannot stop your eyes from rolling. You let out a heavy sigh, take a sip of your drink, and deploy the ultimate weapon of the anti-fan, You say, oh, did the local Sportsball team do the thing with the points? It is a classic move. It is witty, it is dripping with sarcasm, and it immediately establishes that you are entirely above the trivial, sweaty, grunting spectacle that everyone else is obsessed with. You might even drop the legendary line, I don't even own a TV. But let's put the magnifying glass down for a second and turn the psychological mirror back onto you, because science has a term for this condescending attitude. It is called compensatory narcissism, and it is entirely driven by a deeply rooted subconscious insecurity. Let's be brutally honest here. Why do people who don't watch sports feel the need to belittle the people who do? Why do they wear their ignorance of football as a badge of intellectual honor? The answer lies in how the human brain processes being left out. Neurologically speaking, social exclusion is terrifying. Functional MRI scans have shown that the brain processes social rejection using the exact same neural pathways that it uses to process physical pain. When you are standing by the water cooler and your co-workers are intensely bonding over a shared emotional experience that you cannot participate in, your primitive brain rings an alarm bell. It whispers, you are isolated from the tribe. You are alone. To protect your ego from the very real, very sharp pain of being a social outcast, your brain executes a brilliant, albeit slightly toxic, defense mechanism. It flips the narrative. Instead of accepting the painful reality, which is simply that you do not share the group's interests, your brain convinces you that you are deliberately choosing to be an outsider because you are intellectually superior. The subconscious logic goes like this: I am not excluded because I don't fit in. I am excluded because I am on a higher evolutionary plane. While they are acting like primitive apes cheering for a piece of leather, I am using my brain for sophisticated pursuits. By mocking football as sportsball, you are artificially inflating your own status to compensate for the discomfort of alienation. You are building an intellectual fortress to hide the fact that, in this specific cultural moment, you are the odd one out. It is a very comfortable lie, but it is still a lie. Not caring about the NFL does not automatically make you a philosopher, a genius, or a superior human being. It simply means your dopamine receptors don't fire when someone scores a touchdown. That is it. But here is where the psychological rabbit hole goes even deeper. You might sit there, feeling incredibly smug about your immunity to the tribal hysteria of a football stadium. You might think you have evolved past the need for the primitive in-group versus out-group dynamic. But you haven't. Not even close. You haven't escaped the matrix of tribalism. You have just chosen a different stadium. So, you don't watch the NFL, you don't scream at referees, you don't paint your face, and you definitely don't cry when a 22-year-old misses a field goal. You look at the madness of sports culture and think you are a free thinker, a true, independent individual who has evolved past the primitive need for group hysteria. But here is the greatest psychological plot twist of all. You are not immune to tribalism. No one is. The human brain physically cannot survive without a tribe. It is a biological imperative. If you aren't getting your tribal dopamine from sports, your brain hasn't eliminated the craving. It has simply found a substitute. In behavioral psychology, this is related to substitution theory. You didn't abandon the concept of the sport, you just changed stadiums. And the psychological arenas that non-fans choose to obsess over are often far more intense and far more consuming than an actual game of football. Think about it honestly for a second. What is your football? Is it politics? Do you sit glued to your screen on election night or during a debate, essentially watching two teams wearing red and blue? Do you cheer when your side scores a rhetorical point and experience profound, world-ending despair when the other side wins? You use insider jargon, you demonize the opposing side, and you tie your personal morality to the victory of your chosen team. That is a sport. Maybe your football is the stock market or crypto. You join exclusive subreddits. You aggressively attack the non-believers. You hold the line, and you wait for your chosen coin to go to the moon. Or perhaps your stadium is the tech world. The endless, bitter tribal warfare between Apple and Android users. The console wars between PlayStation and Xbox. Or the cult-like devotion and absolute visceral hatred surrounding polarizing figures like Elon Musk. Or maybe it's just pop culture, the Marvel versus DC debate, the outrage over a movie adaptation of your favorite book, or the hyper-defensive, attack dog mentality of stan culture around a pop star. You might look at a guy crying over a football game and think it's completely pathetic. But are you getting into furious, blood pressure-raising arguments with strangers on the internet over a politician who doesn't know you exist? Or a billionaire who will never read your tweet? or a fictional character in a television show. Psychologists call these parasocial relationships. They are one-sided psychological bonds where you invest massive amounts of emotional energy, time, and identity into a person, a brand, or an ideology that gives absolutely nothing back to you personally. It is exactly what a sports fan does with a football franchise. You are experiencing the exact same borrowed emotions. You are relying on the victories of others to feel successful, and you are creating a defined outgroup to focus your natural human hostility. When you strip away the intellectual posturing, the underlying neuroscience is identical. The need to belong, the need to be right, and the need to defeat the enemy are hardwired deeply into our DNA. The only difference between a die-hard sports fan and a die-hard political junkie, or a crypto bro, or a tech elitist is the aesthetic of the uniform. They chose a jersey. You chose an ideology. But the game? The game is exactly the same. In fact, sports fans might actually have the healthier option. At least their game has a clock, and when the 60 minutes are up, they can go home. Your game never ends. So, if everyone is hardwired for tribalism, and you are just as susceptible to the psychology of the in-group as the most rabid football fan, what is the actual benefit of not caring about sports? Is there any psychological advantage to being the outsider? Absolutely. And it all comes down to a core concept in psychology called your locus of control. A person's locus of control is the degree to which they believe they have power over the emotional and practical events in their life. When a die-hard fan sits down to watch a high-stakes playoff game, they are voluntarily surrendering their internal locus of control. They are literally outsourcing their emotional equilibrium to a group of 22-year-old millionaires playing a game thousands of miles away. If the team wins, the fan experiences a massive, unearned spike in dopamine. But if the team loses, their entire week is ruined. They experience genuine psychological distress, anger, and grief over an event they had absolutely zero ability to influence. By simply not caring about the game, you possess an incredible psychological freedom. You have retained your internal locus of control. Your Sunday afternoons are not held hostage by a referee's bad call. Your blood pressure does not spike because a man in a helmet dropped a piece of leather. While millions of people are subjecting themselves to a manufactured emotional roller coaster, you get to enjoy the profound, quiet peace of an eerily empty grocery store on Super Bowl Sunday. You get to exist entirely outside the simulation. So, what should you do with this realization? First, drop the superiority complex. The next time you're at a party and someone brings up the playoffs, you don't need to roll your eyes, and you certainly don't need to deploy the word sportsball. You understand the neuroscience now. You understand the evolutionary need for their behavior. They aren't being stupid. They are simply engaging in a deeply human, ancient ritual of tribal bonding. But equally importantly, you never need to feel ashamed, awkward, or alienated for not joining in. You don't have to fake a smile or pretend to know the quarterback's name just to survive the Monday morning coffee break. You are not broken. You are not a buzzkill. You are a biological necessity. Your brain possesses a hardwired, neurological immunity to the hysteria of the crowd. In the grand evolutionary tapestry of the human tribe, you are essentially the designated driver. You are the objective observer, the one keeping a cool head and watching the perimeter while the rest of the village collectively loses its mind. And that is a psychological identity worth being intensely proud of. If this deep dive helped you finally understand your own brain, or if it just gave you the perfect, scientifically backed excuse for why you ignore football, hit the subscribe button right now. We explore the hidden psychology behind everyday human behavior, and you won't want to miss the psychological illusions we decode next. And before you go, I want you to be brutally honest with yourself, and with me in the comments down below. If football isn't your tribe, what is? What is your substitute stadium? Are you fiercely defending a political ideology, a tech brand, a crypto coin, or a cinematic universe? Drop your alternative sport in the comments, and let's see how many different tribes we actually have watching this video. Thank you for watching, and enjoy your incredibly peaceful Sunday.